Hey everyone, my name's Andy. I'm from the Finding Value Finance channel. Today we've got Trader Ferg with us. I just wanted to get him back to see what's going on, what his opinions are on the market, if he's making any changes in terms of overall sectors. Um, so welcome to the channel. You've been on it before. I'm not going to do a
Yeah.
large introduction to it. So what's your views on the market right now? And where have you done any shifts? Have you changed anything? Kind of just stay in the path? What's going on there?
Yeah, so it's well, thanks for having me back. Yeah, I always love your channel, Andy. Just to put that out there to start. Yeah, the simple, like we were just talking about before, the simple answer is not much has changed. It's just, yeah, we're just experiencing a lot of volatility, and if anything, everything I'm seeing is just validating the thesis. We're seeing nothing get fixed on the sort of in the big picture. Every every act from policymakers is making the whole energy crisis worse, whether it's trying to manipulate demand, which history's shown you can't really manipulate demand unless you're going to get pretty extreme, and then all the actions are destroying supply on the longer end. Like any attempt, whether it's windfall taxes, price caps, all you're doing is just pushing capital away from the sector. And the only way you solve an energy crisis or a commodity crisis in general is bring more supply on. And yeah, like it's almost a running joke between my mentor and I how every time we're sitting down to have a chat and record videos, we're like, you just adding to the current positions, and he's like, yep, no, just trying to get as much weight in all the stuff. Any volatility is good, and any places that have deviated from the kind of core energy trade usually got a good kick in the ass. So I love some of the alternative trades. I love tin. I'd like dry bulk, but he ended up being quite tied to China, and China's just the demand side of China and when it'll reopen. Like I always kind of joke, anyone that has any certainty over sort of China's COVID policy, I sort of remind them of what was it, was it 3 weeks to flatten the curve or something? Like it's just, the stuff can just drag on and on and on. So I'm a bit cagey about sort of doubling down on those sort of trades. I still do have my reasonably weighty position sizes, but yeah, energy still front and center. And if anything, I'm just constantly digging into where is the biggest catalyst immediately, because there's so many good fundamental stories. I just want the like immediate catalyst to be really working for me.
Yeah, they've been releasing these barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. China's been on
Yeah,
lockdown. They've been holding that demand down, so to speak. Maybe they've got an energy crisis over there themselves. If you kind of look into it and read it, I don't think it's too much based around COVID. I think they've got energy problems or like just lock everything down.
yeah,
So what I've seen though is it looks like China's reopening, and I'm seeing the travel and all the flights actually that demand starts to come back for flying. So um, you know, I'll say it this way: we've got 80 something $80 a barrel oil, roughly speaking. Would you have guessed that we'd still be at $80 a barrel with an SPR release and China lockdown? And what do you think is going to happen when all this opens up and the SPR stops releasing? What's your expectations after all this?
yeah. Well, this is what I'm trying to capture at the moment. So I've spent the last 2 days, like I'm still trying to get my angle on how to play this. I just want, whether it's WTI option future spreads, or I prefer Brent, but Brent's hasn't, the market's not quite as liquid, but I'm trying to structure some sort of a bull call, maybe like peak winter. Like I was looking somewhere in that sort of February, March. Yeah, I think that's the current trade, because in an energy crisis, like sort of all the energy prices converge. So you can't have one BTU that's too much cheaper than the other. And we're seeing this play out with a lot of the oil burning capacity starting to come online in Europe. So the IEA was estimating it would be about, I think it was 400,000 barrels will be burned over this winter. Josh Young, he just released a paper a few weeks ago at Bison Interest, saying he thinks it will be at least double, more like 800,000. Really, it's only getting really limited by the capacity to burn the stuff for electricity, because they're just not going to be able to. It's just going to be an absolute scramble for cheap energy. They'll use whatever they can. I don't know if you saw, there was an article 2-3 weeks ago that Germany was pushing ahead with shutting down one of the nuclear plants, and the replacement for it was going to be a floating oil burning facility. And so it's just this idea that whenever there's kind of a big divergence between the various energy sources, you want to play that as hard as you can for that kind of divergence to be closed, because historically gas always goes first because it's the hardest to store, and then you'll have each follow. And generally uranium's kind of like the last to go, because you'll have all the utilities have to step in, but then because it's a small sector, it's often gets squeezed the most. So yeah, my immediate thoughts are just, how can I get more leverage to the oil trade? So I've been doing that via product tankers. I love that trade. That's been really leaning into that. The extra ton miles via Russia. It's this whole idea of when you've got a great fundamental story. I've been smacked around the head a bit, having a great fundamental story but no catalyst. So when you've got the great fundamental story, the sort of scrapping and low order book, the no capacity in shipyards out to 2025, but then you get your catalyst at the same time, which is with all product going into Europe being banned supposedly the start of February, then this ton miles will continue going through the roof. You've already got, as I said, all the sort of the fundamental catalysts. You're going to have all this stuff shipped. Like, the silliness of it is, with, I think it was 50% of diesel going into Europe was coming from Russia, and then when that's going to come offline, instead it's going to be India buying cheap Russian crude, refining it, and then shipping it back to Europe for them to use. And so all that screams at me is just higher ton miles, and that's kind of the catalyst. I was just looking for those sort of catalysts on top. So yeah, that's just a quick overview of like where I'm kind of looking for opportunities at the moment. And other than that, it's just sticking with what's already working. Just keep adding to coal, some of my coal positions, keep chipping away with stuff that I'm very happy with, and I see a long runway.
So you would say that you're adding into strength of all those companies, and you're not necessarily picking up anything in the weaker commodities like tin, copper, stuff like that?
Yeah, no, it's been the most interesting question I've been getting recently, is like, you always said to go for that the most hated. And that has been sort of a deviation from my normal strategy, where I would normally be sort of adding to tin, but I've already got a decent tin position, and I just dislike how sort of connected that is, not only to China but also sort of growth, kind of like the dry bulk trade, like that is sort of tied at the hip to global GDP growth, and especially Chinese growth. And I'm not that comfortable making that trade. I'd prefer this idea that you can separate commodities between OPEX and CAPEX. So you've got sort of running costs, so they're always going to be required, which is just the energy trade in itself. You're always going to have the demand elasticity of energy. Like, it's, even in a pretty bearish setup, you're still going to use a lot of energy. Like the GFC was only down 2.5% on the year, or even in a full-blown COVID in 2020, it was down 8-9. So whereas the more CapEx commodities, the sort of future investment, whether it's steel, copper, aluminium, tin, all those, they're a bit more, they can take a far harder hit. And so trying to sort of minimize that, even if they are showing sort of a more attractive sort of asymmetry at the moment, just because I guess I have so much conviction on the energy side of things.
Yeah, I'm the same way though. I'm like, so when I go back and I challenge things and I look at the energy side of things, I said, okay, if this is going to get short in energy or get like in a big squeeze, what I always think about, and maybe you can tell us your thoughts as well. I always think, well, energy is really the only thing that's going to work, because everything else is a major consumer of energy. So I can't imagine governments and or just humans or societies or whatever, you can't be like, well, let's embark on this gigantic electric vehicle, mineral intensive mining boom at the same time that you've got an energy constrained world. And I just look at this and I'm like, man, there's not really much that's going to work. But then that makes you ultra bullish because you're like, well, not much is going to work outside of energy. Is my viewpoint off, or are you kind of getting the same type of viewpoint here? Are we getting a little bit too concentrated, or am I missing something? What's your opinion on that?
Yes, I've tried to put a piece together on that, and it's actually really hard to get the information. Like this whole idea of embedded energy, like how much embedded energy is there in different commodities? Because then you can kind of build out a better framework for looking at, say, like over I don't know, a ton of copper. What percentage of that is actual energy to extract it, process it, transport it? And there's not much good work done on it. But no, you're thinking along the right lines. That's exactly how I view it. But the bigger framework, I think, is just we've all got so used to just another wave of abundant energy coming. So if you like dial right back to the 50s, you had all like the Saudi and all the big finds in the Middle East. You had all of that come on, and then whenever we've had kind of a supply shock, it's been a disruption. So like the oil embargo, that just was politics essentially. You just had to work through that. All the supply was still there, and then there was a whole lot of massive capex boom, and then you had abundant oil moving forward. The next big crash was kind of obviously GFC, but that again was just sort of supply disruption. And this whole time we've had, so from 2000 to 2011, you had China 7x its coal production. So that was another big energy boom. They were prepared to just pollute the hell out of their economy and just absolutely pour like super cheap energy. So we took that for granted at the same time as like globalization was in full swing. And then as soon as that was rolling over, we should have essentially run into some energy constraints. Then the shale boom took off. And then that was just a big bonfire of cash, but got super cheap energy out of that. And now I feel like there's almost it's partly all this sort of bullshit rhetoric around the world of exponential curves and Moore's law and learning curves, that renewables are going to be that next. There was kind of like 7x of coal production, the shale boom, and now it's going to be the renewable boom. But the problem with that is, as kind of beaten to death, it just doesn't have the energy density, and I think it's largely wasted capital. You've got the whole idea that you need a certain energy return on investment to sort of maintain the energy system. Like when you're like there's a great chart that just shows what energy return on investment you need to maintain every part of society. So just to extract it, you need sort of 1.1, 1.2 to, I don't know, to create food, you need 1.4, 1.5, and then you get right up to maintain like a thriving economy with healthcare, you need 1 to 12, arts and all the sort of more sort of, I guess, the absolute top end of society, you're over sort of 1 to 13, and yet renewables we're stuck in this sort of 1 to 2, 1 to 3, and so a lot of that has to go, and that's people are still realizing that, and I feel like all these projections of building out these massive renewable fleets, all this battery demand, not only are you going to run into energy return on investment, you're going to run into material constraints, you're running into infrastructure constraints. Like when you try and electrify everything, people forget how small most economies' electricity component is. Like in Germany, it's only 15 to 20%. I think globally it's about 40%. So when you actually try and electrify like heating, transport, you've got an absolute ton of infrastructure, electrify industry, like try and switch from like coals to arc furnaces. Hello. Had a few little faces popping out of the cheetahs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Did.
So yeah, the where I was going with that whole thing is essentially we're just projecting forward another energy boom that isn't going to happen. And so once you view that the next sort of 10 years from this really energy constrained standpoint, then energy is the main limiting factor, and we're just going to keep pushing on it and being surprised how high it goes. Like I saw there's this ridiculous chart doing the rounds on Twitter at the moment. That's BMO sort of almost envisaging a complete mean reversion of the coal price, like right back to where it started in sort of 2019. And it's kind of that thinking combined with the kind of the learning curve thinking that what we've seen in the last year in renewables, all sort of all the prices and batteries all jumping up sort of high single digits, if not double digits, that's all transitory. It's about to mean revert, and then the learning curve is going to take off again and coal's going to roll over. And I want to 100% be on the other side of that viewpoint.
Yeah, here's one thing that I've always, it's a statement. I don't know if it's true or not. The thing that I kind of think, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not, is perhaps we're reaching the limits of fossil fuels. And let's say all these governments kind of know it, but they can't come out and say, hey, look, oil's kind of getting peaky here soon. Coal's getting a little bit peaky. Natural gas, yeah, we can grow it a little bit around the world. But we don't want to scare anybody. So we just said, you know what, let's call it climate change. And let's try to find solutions for the problems with the shortfalls that fossil fuels will eventually have. Then we'll just implement all this stuff basically all at once and try to basically front run the fossil fuel decline. Do you think that has any merit, or do you think that they actually believe in climate change and all this other stuff?
Yeah, that's such a tough question because I recently just had a interview with Lars Schoenekel, and he's like a big proponent of all the kind of energy return on investment. He's trying to do away with the levelized cost of energy and push towards the full cost of energy. And he's also got someone that he's been in touch with called Simon Michaud, and he's an Australian professor that goes through all the mineral constraints. And both of them are sort of saying like it doesn't take much effort to know that this isn't going to work. Like you can pick any sort of material constraint, and you can just see you can't climb very far up the curve, and you run into like there's not enough lithium, there's not enough rare earths, there's not enough. It's all controlled by China. And the same with the energy return on investment. Like you like take Germany, that they're supposedly saying that you can build out this whole renewable fleet backed by storage and have storage, and yet here we are with the highest energy prices in Europe, and they haven't even added any storage. The storage currently is their coal plants and their gas plants, and they're supposedly going to shut them down, and so then they're going to have to build the batteries and add a whole lot more cost, and then they can't get the batteries because of the material constraints. And so yeah, it does beg this like question of like what is actually going on? Are they just this stupid? I think I took a screenshot. I'll see if I can find it from. Yeah, this is from Simon's recent piece, and he does ask the question. I'll just read it off to the end. Said, in conclusion, this report suggests that replacing an existing fossil fuel powered system using renewable technology such as solar panels or wind turbines will not be possible for the entire global human population. There is simply not enough time nor resources to do this by the current targets set by the world's most influential nations. What may be required therefore is a significant reduction of societal demand for all resources of all kinds. This implies a very different social contract and a radically different system of governance to what is in place today. Invariably, this leads to the conclusion that existing renewable energy sectors and EV technology systems are merely stepping stones to something else rather than the final solution. It is recommended that some thought be given to what that something else might be. This is a bit dark and ominous, but this is a guy that's just run through every material constraint across everything we're projecting. So you can't sort of take him as like being too much of a conspiracy theorist, because everything being projected doesn't work. And so yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. I don't know really what to put on it, whether you do go with the whole sort of World Economic Forum and like pictures of Klaus being sort of Dr. Evil, or yeah, I always struggle with the what's the saying that never put down to
Never
was
leave
it
it.
malevolence? What
Go,
which
go.
was just going to be incompetence. Like a certain amount of this is Louis Gouge got this great phrase. It's like the world's running on sort of cover your ass, and it's just kind of pleasing pleasing the populace via, because you've got kind of got democracy in overdrive with social media and everyone being cancelled if they don't have the right policy, and so everyone's essentially voting the wrong policies at all points. And we got so used to cheap energy, going back to that kind of example I was showing, that we've just had these constant energy booms, that it kind of ignited all this hubris of we can always have more abundant energy because of technology, and there'll just be another shale type boom with renewables. And yeah, I don't know if policymakers are that smart to kind of have worked this out and are taking advantage of it. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought through that, what the alternative might be. Honestly, I'm just enjoying taking advantage of the prices it's giving us.
Yeah, you gotta short government through oil.
That's it. All my phrase is like, if you want to get long sort of government stupidity, then it's coal. It's every time a policymaker does something really dumb, says like, we're gonna cancel this by 2030, you know there's no way, you just got to get long coal because it's the quickest solution when they have to backpedal. Yeah, and we're already seeing like a title for it. Like I love trying to spot what the new trends, what it'll be called, and I've started to see it pop up in multiple publications. Is I think there'll be a whole run of policymakers running on a pro-growth, pro-business platform, and all that'll mean will be, we're going to burn a lot of coal and cut your energy bills in half and give you cheap energy again. And that'll be the sort of deviation from the sort of the net zero environmental crowd.
Did you hear about Kathy Wood?
Oh, well, she's launching something else, is she? Like that,
No,
was
I,
it
I think
500 minimum VC
I,
fund?
I think she got didn't she leave ARC? Well, the thing that pops out the most is, and out of all of your posts that you posted, it was the Kathy Wood call on oil, and how you said it was like chicken sitting out in the raw chicken sitting out in the sun or something, like this is going to age like raw chicken out in the sun. And
Yeah.
I just started laughing because when I first started my YouTube channel, I was talking about oil, and I was really bullish even in 2020. I was like,
Mm,
we're going to go to like $200+ on oil per barrel, 250, something like that, maybe even 300 if it gets too crazy. I'm
mm.
like, I can't tell at this point, but I'm sure it's going to get crazy towards the end. And people would post in there, Kathy Wood says it's never going over $20 a barrel ever again. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But when you posted that, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Someone else actually thinks similarly to what I do, or how I think too. So, what else is on your mind? What do you see on the markets? What are you worried about out there? Are you worried about anything? Are you just seeing this as volatility? Do you see any actual, recessionary problems, or is this just something to ride through?
Yeah, well, I think like sure I think there is going to be a recession, and I just don't pretend to know that I've got any sort of insight into it. I feel like people always get carried away with sort of global macro insights. Like I'm always very, very cagey to think that I have any insight in any of that. My basic metric is that with energy, there's such supply destruction that it's going to outpace demand destruction.
Mhm.
That's just my model. That's all that matters. Like you can get super bearish on the demand side, but I still think the supply side's even more bearish. So even in a pretty big bust up, still think I'm going to come out in front with all of these energy trades, just because the supply side's going to keep sort of balancing that equilibrium or pulling you out ahead. And then you've got just a sort of, it's almost like a global like using the IEA for example, just everyone forever underestimates energy growth and energy demand. And you've just got these, like, I've got a great chart that's just think it's like 4 or 5 years in a row that the IEA has been estimated that global oil consumption would stay flat or slight growth, and then it adds 1 million barrels a day. And then the next year they revise it and they say, no, now it'll stay flat. And then it adds another 1 million barrels a day. It's just this is slow, steady climb of 1.5 million barrels. And a lot of that, it's nothing to do with developed markets. It's all to do with a lot of the emerging markets and a lot of them going through S curves, like actually sort of trying to ramp up their energy demand. And we kind of have forgotten with China being locked down, they're one of the ones that are in the middle of their S curve. And once things open up there, that's a lot of additional energy demand. I think everyone's just kind of glassed over that fact that, whereas I don't want to have heavy bets on some of the more sort of capex heavy commodities, like going too heavy in the dry bulk or the tin, it's a hell of a tailwind to energy once all that demand comes back in. And I like having that kind of, almost call it like a free call option on the whole portfolio. That demand will really just light a rocket under the portfolio. Whereas if it doesn't come, I'm kind of happy just muddling along, knowing that the sort of supply demand picture is going to be in my favor for a long time to come.
You know, I keep thinking too, at some point, you know, we've always grown and grown and grown and grown. And do we have to offset these declines that we're getting in oil? And if you look at the decline rates, they're 6, 7, 8% on a global scale. That's 6, 7, 8 million barrels per day that you have to replace each year. You know, when I look at this and I'm going, well, we need to replace, you know, we need to bring online about half of the United States every single year to just stay flat, let alone any sort of growth. What is this world going to look like if we can't grow oil? You know, I mean, that's kind of the end all be all question, right? And are we getting close to that point where we're kind of just tapped out? You know, and at that point, what other investment's really going to work? You know, I mean, that's the question that I always ask.
Yeah, I love that question, and I got like a optimistic side on it and a more sort of Malthusian side on it, I guess. So well, first, like you see, like the likes of the IEA think that we can just roll over energy demand. I think their net zero forecast is you just reduce energy demand by 10% across the board, whereas anyone that's kind of using their brain, I think even the IEEJ, which is the Japanese version of it, they think will have a minimum of sort of 30% growth. The EIA is like 50% just based on population increase. But yeah, when you talk about these kind of constraints, it's like we've never seen anything like it, apart from one of the only like case studies of like a economy quickly kind of weaning itself off a third of oil was Cuba, when the Soviets ran into some issues and stopped exporting them oil, and they had to make do on a third less, and the economy just essentially collapsed. They consumed a third less, but the average Cuban lost like 6 or 7 pounds. The grocery stores were empty. And that's what really concerns me, because there is a lot more buffer in the developed world, but in the developing world, they don't have the same buffer. So as we sort of energy starve them, I reckon that's more of a recipe for war, I guess. Like they're just not going to take that line down, and they'll do what they have to acquire energy, and then so that's kind of where I see that going. If you kind of follow is it Hubbard curve, like when he was thinking that we're all going to run over, and it kind of got forgotten when you had the shale boom, which was just a short spike, but then the shale boom with the high decline rates, it's obviously a pretty short-lived spike, and now we're following it back down. And it doesn't seem like we're going to rectify it at all. There's so to answer your question, I just see being more and more energy constrained. The only way that we could start climbing the energy sort of density ladder again would be a proper nuclear build out and a really push with SMRs, which is one of my one of the only investments that I openly admit it's a bit more sort of I entered it not only on the sort of fundamentals, but also being a bit more sort of, it's what I want to see in the world, a bit more ideology, a bit more sort of, yeah, oh, the words escaping me, but what I want to see in the world was, yeah, SMR, the ticker, the sort of new scale, sort of small SMRs that you can sort of group together. They you could, that would be sort of a that would be the sort of positive outcome, is that we could climb up to a more nuclear driven society. That would be the way we'd get back up the energy density ladder. You could have all sorts of offshoots of that, like you could use the excess power for producing hydrogen. So you've got like warm or hot electrolysis, so you can make cheap hydrogen, which would actually make sense, rather than the sort of trying to use renewables to make hydrogen. It's just the economics just fucking stupid. And yeah, you could actually make sense, but we're not making any of these decisions now. So even as I'm talking about this, like you'd need to really see sort of hundreds of billions being poured into it. And since we're not making those decisions, it is pretty grim for a pretty extended period, as we keep pretending that low energy density forms are gonna be the savior, and just kind of ignoring some pretty basic questions. Like I was just yesterday, I was trying to research, when you talk about like biofuels and like running jets on biofuels, I was wondering what percentage of like the corn is actually made from fertilizer that is produced via Haber Bosch. So you've got this kind of weird feedback loop with even producing ethanol. A lot of studies have shown it's sort of a 1-to-1 energy return on investment, but I didn't know if they'd looked into the synthetic fertilizer, which is essentially gas, or it can be coal, going into it. And so you've got these just all these horrible uses of energy that need to be removed before we can even start addressing the problem, which means, yeah, kind of got to forecast everything to get a lot nastier before correct decisions are made. And the only reprieve is going to be, as I was saying before, the few policymakers that see an opportunity to take the other side of this with a pro-growth, pro-business, and sort of capture that pain that's been felt in Europe with people's power bills going 5x and them having to close their business. Of course, they're going to start voting against the sort of the net zero or climate change, sort of the Greens running on those sort of platforms.
Yeah, I think eventually everyone's gonna have to switch to nuclear if they want to maintain a complex society, right? I mean,
Yeah.
This seems like, I mean, if I were to be a if I was in government and I were to try to cheat the system the way that they're implementing all this stuff, it seems to me like they just all went long oil, and then they're putting in the stupidest solutions that they can possibly find of renewables, solar. Let's just tear up all this oil that we've got. Might as well use it all up, right? And all this mining of lower and lower ore grades. We'll just use all this oil. And then we'll wait as long as possible to implement any sort of correct solution. So we're just going to completely squeeze at, everything we can that's fossil fuel related, coal, natural gas, and oil. And then we'll get everybody to the largest pain point possible. We'll probably break some currencies in the mix. And then we're going to implement and basically bring in the solution of nuclear, because it's the only thing that's going to work from an energy return on energy invested standpoint. So I just look at all this and I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, how are we this dumb? There's no way we're this bad, is it? I mean, are we really this bad? I mean, as a human species, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I get lots of words trying to think about this.
Yeah, the German policymakers are certainly confirming that.
It's like,
they're leading the way. Yeah. And even like it just hurts my head with how little can be observed from sort of real world examples. Like I I went over the I think it was, what's it called, the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, and they released this paper in Australia that's what the renewable build out's been, and it was, the title of the paper was essentially like all-in cost of renewables is cheaper than coal and gas. And so they're saying with batteries and with the grid build out. And I just, as soon as I saw that paper, I was like, I want to get my hands on this paper and look at what the assumptions are for this stuff. And it's just absurd learning curve assumptions. Like every year has to be 10-15% cost reduction compounded right out to 2050 to make this work. And batteries, they were doing 5-10% every year, despite the fact that in the very, as they were writing it, all the costs are going up at least the opposite. Like they're at least 10% cost increases. And it's this like really, like it just infuriates me how simple some of this is to understand. Like take solar, like with the modular cost, a lot of the learning curve has been the actual modular cost shrinking. So the learning curve has been correct, but you could kind of tell that it was going to run out of runway because the modular cost of solar going from 30% of the total cost to 10%. If you reduce that by another third, it's just a far smaller amount. So you can't get those total cost reductions. And what you're left with is material costs, labor costs, and energy costs. And all of those, like polysilicon going into solar, that's up 3-4x. Labor, good luck. We're seeing, I just saw an article before that the French were striking in their refinery plants, and there's a whole lot of refinery plants off now. They were striking in the nuclear plant. Like you're not going to have that that kind of forced labor, especially out of China, unless we just the West just completely turns its back to it. And then and the last is energy, like transporting all this stuff. Like all this stuff's got to be shifted around on trucks. And I just,
Well,
coming back to it, is it,
what gets me is Germany. Like
yeah,
they're sitting there, they've got massive inflation going on. Their energy prices are skyrocketing all around them. And Russia's like, you know what? We're going to cut some natural gas to all of Europe. Cut. And they're like, well, we're already screwed. You might as well just shut down our nuclear plants. I mean, like,
yeah,
how stupid is this? That just
yeah,
doesn't make any sense at all.
mm,
I mean, what I would be doing is like, all right, we should probably use whatever we have that is low cost and run it until it's dead. I mean, that's the way that I would do it. But I mean, I mean, is there a big plan around this? Do you think? I mean, are they doing this on purpose? They have to be. This just doesn't make any sense to me. I look at this and I read it, and you're seeing their inflation costs, like they're just going vertical. And
mm,
everything that they're going to produce, all their businesses, they're going to be going like the opposite direction of this.
yeah.
So I don't understand how one could come to any conclusion close to where they're at. Like it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's an ideology, and the only way you're gonna break it is just severe pain. It's like Doomberg's got this great whenever he sees something stupid, he just retweets on the top of it like more pain required until the right decisions are made. Like I feel like a lot of the sort of the green movement is not gonna be forced to realize the damage they've done until they're sitting in the dark with a €1,000 bill for the honor of having intermittent sort of power. It's I've definitely been wrong on this. I thought there would be more of a sort of a mean reversion earlier. I thought like logic would take hold. Again, going back to Doomberg's work, he'd come up with this thesis of anti-logic. He's like, whatever the right thing to do for policymakers, you can trust them to do the wrong thing. I found it's definitely been the case the last 6 months. Like if you think what is actual constraints and what they should do, kind of like their energy wall when they worked out they weren't going to have enough gas, and they're like, okay, we're going to absolutely double down on renewables, and they couldn't double down on wind because it was already kind of, well, they have pushed for more wind, but it was already tied up in like onshore, they're having a lot of problems with permitting, finding extra land, getting it past all the local communities because no one wants wind turbines next to them. And so the easy one was to push on solar. And so they're trying to like double the solar capacity. But then solar in Germany is absolutely useless. They're running at like a 10% capacity factor, huge
Mhm.
seasonal variability. And again, they're like the costs are going through the roof. And then you impact the grid horribly because as you install more solar, it's you're just pushing power into the grid when you don't need it in the middle of the day, and you need the most in the morning or in the evening when you're going home, and it also does nothing for, as I say, sort of replacing your heating, which is a big component of sort of yeah, it just doesn't take much to completely pull it apart. So I agree that is there something bigger at play? I honestly don't give them the benefit of the doubt then. I just think it's like huge incompetence driven by this fundamental misunderstanding of renewables are not going to bring energy abundance. And we just need extreme pain to work that out before there's a mean reversion to smarter policies. And that mean reversion will probably be coal to start because just the reality is you can't build nuclear on a quick time frame. Like you got to have a long planning phase. And so yeah, I'm just scanning the news for this sort of who are going to be the first, especially within Europe, to like defect and go and run on these sort of pro growth, pro business platforms. And then I think once one country can look across and say, "Oh, what they knocked their power bills in half by going down that road," then you'll see the tide turn. And yeah, I think was the phrase was like, yeah, Germany's going to martyr itself on the green ideology. It's just going to be the first to kind of blow itself up, and hopefully, based on that, you'll have other countries not pursue. You already are seeing some pragmatic policies. You can look up South Korea, and they
Mhm.
have reversed their renewable build out to, I think they were aiming for 34%, and they've dialed it back to 20 something. And the difference is now nuclear. They've taken nuclear from 20 to low 30s. And so that's like the start of like sort of pragmatic policies. You see India say, we'll not sort of sacrifice growth. So we're gonna put the foot down on coal again. Um, yeah, and I see that as being the trend. It's starting far later than I thought, and I think it might take an extremely painful winter, maybe even 2 winters, until it's completely dead in the water and we've started to reverse course.
Yeah, one thing that I do notice, if you were to ask me, how could I maximize the increase of oil and have the biggest blow off top possible, how would I do it? Well,
Mm,
I guess, I mean, you could just put Biden into power because as we go to break out this summer, he just floods the market with strategic petroleum reserve oil.
yeah.
Obviously, there's probably things that they want behind it. They want to hold down the inflation. So that's one thing they could kind of manipulate and control. China went on, the COVID lockdowns and whatnot, but they're all starting to come back in one shot. Now, if they come out and they say that they're going to come and fill the strategic petroleum reserve at the end of this year, I'm just going to start laughing because
Yeah.
you're going to go from a shift of a like a balanced market with 1 million barrels released from the strategic petroleum reserves with China on lockdown. China
Mm,
comes back online with, I don't know, a couple more million barrels, million or two more demand as that ramps up. And then if they swap from releasing one to adding one, well, that's like a 4 or 5 million barrel a day difference per day. And I'm like, we're going to launch this thing if that were
yeah.
to occur. I'm not saying that they're going to fill up the strategic petroleum reserves. But I mean, they're basically, plus they disincentivized anybody who was an oil producer and delayed them out. So I'm
Mm,
just scratching my head going, what the heck are these guys doing? And then you have to go and you have to look back like, imagine if Germany reelects this person who's putting in all of these crappy energy policies. Like, imagine if they reelect this person.
mm.
Like, what does that say about the entire country? what does that say if we reelect some of these people that we have? You know, and I'm still confused how some of these people continually get reelected, and they think I'm going to give out Nancy Pelosi's quote. You can check it up on YouTube, guys, if you want.
Yeah.
She said that it's great that we're transitioning away from a fossil fuel to natural gas. And I was sitting there like, wait, natural gas is a fossil fuel, Nancy. What are you talking about? I mean, I hear this and I'm like, there's no way we can elect these people in here. Like, what is going on? But yeah, I just wanted to get that off my chest because what I see is just complete stupidity, and this is probably going to do very well over the next few years. Do you see anything that's going to stop this move? I mean, is
Um,
anything?
I wanted to touch on a few points you just made there. So first, it's kind of interesting when you frame the SPR as almost going to turn into like another Sprott uranium trust. So they're just going to be in the background hoovering up more barrels into a spike. Like I wouldn't put it past them being that stupid because they'll need it in an emergency, and so they'll be like trying to like climb the curve as it takes off. So you've kind of got this weird dynamic that the politicians have created. So yeah, I just wanted to say that to start with. And what was my other point with? It's completely escaped me. Sorry, what was your question? I forgot.
Well, what I was saying, is there anything that you think could stop this move, or is it just going to delay it a little bit?
Um,
The move in energy and the move in oil.
I think you'd have a lot more volatility. You could obviously have some pretty big bust ups, and never be too cocky that the fundamentals are going to be where stocks are going to go. Like if you have a proper liquidity crash, it drags everything with it. So there's always that fact of I've had that. It's kind of like I always use examples of like sort of like gold bugs in the GFC, and these gold just got taken out and shot just with everything else. Like you don't. It's always just a race for liquidity and dollars. So I am mindful of that if we get a really big bust up, but it's just volatility. That's why I always say no leverage that's going to carry out the account. And if anything, I've been trying to add a bit more short exposure. So one of the recent trades was shorting US utilities reasonably heavily, and that was like a way to get kind of like that. That was from Robert Mullen. Wasn't my idea, it's his idea, and it's a way to get kind of short exposure to what are essentially overly valued sort of almost bond proxies that are full of renewable energy. And there's some of the particular names are just like they're paying out near 100% of their earnings and dividends. They're highly leveraged. They're just just a bug looking for a windshield. And so that's kind of my way of trying to think if there is significant blow up, then I'm going to get a sort of an 8x payoff, and that's going to give me a lot of cash. But overall, I'm not really concerned of it. It's just volatility. It's just riding through this. So yeah, I could see a potential blow up. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that just needs to be wiped out. There feels like there needs to be sort of a finishing blow to a lot of things that are just a lot of these kind of zombie companies that are just hanging on. Like they already kind of know they can't survive with higher rates. A lot of the crypto stuff, like why a lot of the stuff even still has a market cap is beyond me. It needs to be wiped out. You need to see the Cathie Woods and the Michael Saylors finally washed out with a tide. And so yeah, I'd like to have some asymmetric trades of downside. So just so I can, it's not really that I even care about the returns. I just want to have some cash if that stuff happens, because it hurts my soul when you have a big downdraft and I see some of the names I love and I don't have cash to put into them. So yeah,
are you carrying a large cash position right now, or are you kind of buying stuff, wait and see?
No, so I'm pretty cash poor at the moment because I've just got a new place. So yeah, got Huffington Nest, got a bub on the way, and so yeah, it wasn't a great time to have to come up with a lot of money, but that's life.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
got to settle in December. So yeah, that wasn't ideal. It'll probably be when the crash is.
So when
There'll just be opportunities galore, and I'll be forking out six figures of money
so
that could have. Yeah,
when you say you've
Hmm.
got a bub, that means a baby, right?
Yeah, baby on the
Yeah,
way. Yep.
because you you guys
Yeah,
use different language over there, and I'm like, what is a
yeah,
bub? Well,
yeah. No,
congratulations on that. Congratulations. You know if
thank
it's a
you,
boy or a girl?
boy. Yep.
Boy, nice.
Yep, boy, and gonna arrive in January. So yeah, no, super excited. My first. So yeah,
Hmm.
really looking forward. And yeah, got the new house that we can just walk down to the beach. So that is yeah, that was always the dream. So yeah,
That's good. That's good.
it's all good.
Congratulations.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Mm.
So do you have anything else that you want to add? I mean, that's a pretty good
I've just got one guy that so I just interviewed him, but he's notoriously underfollowed. Says Dr. Lars Schonekow, and I've known of his stuff for a while, but he's been posting great stuff on YouTube. So I recommend everyone go and have a look at that, because there's like I've read a lot on the energy side, like where you dig down Charles Hall's work, the guy that came up with energy return on investment. You could go through Michael Kelly's stuff, who's like a Cambridge professor, that he's gone through a lot of the constraints. You've got Vaclav Smil, who's probably the most knowledgeable person on it all. His stuff's really dense and hard to read. So you got to sit down and read essays and read these big fat books. And so Lars is the first person I've come across that his presentations, like they're only 20 minutes, and damn are they just explain it so well. He just gets straight to the chase and explains the entire problem. So yeah, I just like to try and push more people to his work. It kind of always just annoys me when I see some person talking about Come Rocket and it's got like 1 million views, and then you've got Lars putting out these brilliant friggin' slides and he's got like 1,000 views. It just annoys me, the difference between this kind of crypto shills and yet someone putting good work that the world needs to understand, and it's just getting no attention. So yeah, but I guess that'll slowly revert with people again going back to Dermod's thing. They'll, with enough pain, everyone will start to question this stuff, and they'll start to look through at a lot of these exponential sort of the exponential talk of the energy system. They'll realize, no, this is just hard physical constraints, and we need to do stuff differently.
yeah.
Mm.
No, I agree. I agree. Well, that's all the questions I have. So, I really appreciate you coming on to the channel. How can people reach out to you? It's Trader Ferg on Twitter, right? At
Yep.
Trader Ferg.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And
No,
I'll put
just
that in
at
the
Trader.
description link below. Yep.
Yep, just Traderferg. Got a newsletter at traderferg.com, and yeah, also do interviews and shows what I'm doing with my portfolio on Crux. And that's pretty much all my online presence, really. Other than that, I'm chilling on the beach here, doing jiu-jitsu. That's about it.
Good, good, good. Well, all right. That's all I've got. Thanks for coming on. And if you guys want to follow them, I'll put it in the description link below. We'll catch everybody later.
Cheers, Andy.
See ya.